Well, welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're going to be talking about needs versus the thing I want my spouse to do, because that we get a little confused about that sometimes. And if we don't know how to separate those, if we don't operate in integrity as we move forward with that, we can actually damage our relationship. Is the thing that you think you need actually a need? And then on top of that, is it a thing your spouse should even be satisfying? Like, let's get down into the nitty gritty of what is healthy here. And I am once again with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. Kyle, you deal with people that struggle with this concept of needs versus wants. And you know, as well as anybody in the work that you do, that this is kind of a big deal. So misapplication, misunderstanding can really damage or positively or negatively impact relationships. So when you think of this topic, what starts to come to mind with it? Where do you want to start?
Well, I like the terms that you're opening with there: misapplication, misunderstanding. I also want to add a third one there to complete the alliteration: manipulation.
Oof.
Excuse me. Not that I want manipulation or want to even talk about it, but I find so frequently with couples that I work with that one or the other of them have unwittingly committed themselves to a Ponzi scheme, a ploy, a scam. And what they've done is they've committed to meet the needs of their partner, and their partner, on the other hand, is quite simply manipulating them into things they want them to do, things they want from them. And they're not needs at all. Mm-hmm. They're really not. And so a lot of things, commercially get packaged to be one thing when they're really not that at all. And I think we do the same in relationships at times. And it seems to be kind of rampant right now.
Well, and I've seen people make vows within themselves and to God that are, I will make sure my partner's happy always. Like, I will make sure they never feel discouraged or unhappy in this relationship, and I will meet all of their needs. And there's actually a book. I hate this book. I'm not going to give the author's name, but it's about one partner's needs and then the other partner's needs. And every time I've seen somebody or a small group do that book, it's been a massive exodus of dysfunction, argument, problems, and chaos. Not useful. And so let's talk about the concept itself first. What is a need? What's the difference between a need and a want?
Well, I think one of the ways to delineate the two of those things is to stop and be able to identify, and truthfully, this should be done before anybody even considers to follow through with a marriage ceremony. To talk about the things that in their through their lens creates the dynamics of a relationship that's full, creates the dynamics of a relationship that is that's reciprocal. And to say that everything I say that is a need is actually a need, if we want to get really ticky-tacky about it, none of the things that we say that we need do we need to survive, right, to live on this planet. But the things that we see as completers of a relationship, that make it the fulfilling, I am going to be vulnerable to you, and in that, I'm going to ask you to do the same for me. Mm-hmm. And I'll share with you the things that I need, things that make that bond better, that make that closeness mean more, mm-hmm. That will keep us glued together during struggle and difficult times. And if it's not there, then we're more likely to be fractured and broken.
And that's a really good distinction to make, because the first thing that pops into my head around this is friendship. A happy marriage needs friendship as a base, like the foundation of that. You can be married though, and not have a happy marriage and not have friendship and still be okay.
Many are.
Siloed people. You don't have that. You get your relational connections from other people. That happens. And at the same time, it's not what God wants for us, but do we need that? No, we really don't, to be okay. Do we want that? Yeah, you should. But if you can't have it, then you got to be okay with that.
Yeah. And I think the relationship mirrors the thing that Christ said when he said he came to give us life. And he doesn't just leave it there and say, okay, I came to give you life. Good luck. Have a nice life.
Yeah.
He said, I came to bring life and to give it abundantly.
Yeah.
And that abundance, I think, is what separates a great relationship from a relationship, or from even a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Good relationships are okay, and you're not in a crisis all the time, and you're not, necessarily living hand to mouth, and can't take care of your kids and things like that. They can be a good relationship, but a great relationship, the things that you love about one another, they come in abundance. They're always around. You don't worry that you're not going to have what you need or want.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're talking in terms of reasonable expectations here, because it would be safe to say that I want my wife to go out every day and bring home a bag full of money, large bills, please.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it's going to happen, and it doesn't mean it's realistic. And, so there are things and I think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that, as we have introduced this topic today, that there are both men and women in relationships that seek to manipulate their spouse or their partner through saying, these are needs that I have, and if you love me, you will meet those needs.
Yeah.
And then you also said earlier, you said that we make these promises and these covenants and these vows to make that person happy, to do all these things that we're actually incapable of doing.
Yeah, we're not God.
No. And someone's happiness and their satisfaction, or even their contentment, cannot be based solely on the efforts or abilities of someone else.
I had a client I guess it was 2 years ago. She was in a situation where her husband said he needed an open marriage. And you and I were talking about this briefly the other day, of somebody actually believing that they need that, right? And she found us because she was struggling with this, and what's the biblical answer for her? And she was afraid that if she didn't say yes, that he would leave her and she would be alone. And I said, he already has. If he's looking for this now, and he'd been through multiple affairs and all this, I said, you want to try something different. And she did. She ended up having boundaries and saying no. And so then she became, in his eyes, a prize, something worthy, not because she was doing it with arrogance, but she was not condoning, out of fear, sinful behavior. And so he was then called to a higher level of being, because she basically told him, well, sweetheart, I understand you want an open marriage. That doesn't work for me. So if you want to have a marriage with me, it needs to be the two of us. And if you don't want that, you're free to leave and file for divorce and go do whatever you want to do. And I'm sad if that's what you choose, but this is how it's going to be if you're going to be with me. Now, she didn't start there. She started with smaller boundaries, because it's really hard, as you know, to erect a brick wall, when they're, you got to start with a fence, and can you keep the fence up? Right.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she did. And he came to her and said, hey, I want what you have. Like, you didn't put up with this garbage from me. And it didn't happen overnight. And boy, was it hard. But I really admired and respected her for saying, no, this is not a need. This is a thing you want. And by the way, it's not healthy for either of us. And I'm not going to play.
Yeah.
I love that about her.
Yeah. And I love the fact that it may seem like she set an ultimatum, but I don't think she did.
No.
I think she expressed her boundaries. She expressed what she's willing to do and not do, and then gave the choice to him.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's different than an ultimatum. That's not my way or the highway.
Right.
That's, I want this, and I want this with you. I want this with us.
Yep.
And this is what I'm willing to do, and these are things I'm not. So I love the fact that she was solid. She stood for what she felt like she could either tolerate or believe in, even. And didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because when you set ultimatums, it typically marks the end of things.
Yep. That usually doesn't go too well.
Yeah. Because none of us care to have that done, have one thrown at us. And so we usually react in kind.
Well, it's controlling behavior, right?
Yeah.
But the way that she went about it was just so open-ended, and she really did want him to stay, and she communicated that very clearly. What was also true is that there were a number of smaller boundaries that she put in place. Simple, small things like, I love you and I want to be with you, but after 11 o'clock, I'm asleep and I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and anytime between 6 and 11 p.m., baby, I'm yours. But we're not having arguments in the middle of the night. We're not doing anything else in the middle of the night. Like if I'm asleep, mom's closed, like the doors are shut. Just don't be waking me up. And there were times where, she had to leave to protect her sleep because she was coming into this, like you were talking about earlier, with people that, I'll do whatever it takes to make this person happy. Like that's not our job. And it can get twisted and sick pretty doggone fast. So she realized that she needed to take care of herself, that she needed to take care of people around her, that she was responsible for. And then, wow, once you get sleep and then you realize that you're a person of value, then you start interacting differently.
Yeah. But it's great that you bring that up because you talk about setting some we call them smaller boundaries or earlier boundaries, that lead up to the big one. But those, seeing that those are not respected, it's one of those things like, because my my wife will tell me sometimes when I'm a little dense, I guess, she'll say, read the room, Kyle. Read the room. Pay attention, use your context clues. It's almost like use your words now.
Yeah.
And I need that sometimes. I need somebody to say, hey, look, there's things going on that you're not catching.
Yeah.
Okay. And she's catching them. She's seeing them and she's saying, I need to set these steps first. And for this one to be met, these are going to have to be met progressively. But that he saw her resolve,
right,
and that he saw that she was not in a contest and not interested in winning and losing, but resolving the situation, and gave it. She couldn't resolve it by herself, but she could give it the opportunity to be resolved. And he bit.
And the thing about this was she didn't meet his I need an open relationship with, I need a monogamous relationship. It was that's a thing, right? I need you to go to bed at 11 with me. No, I need you to, go to bed at 9 with me. Like those are stupid conversations, like really, but people do that. And instead it was a navigation of what was happening and, being open to God and what God's got going on there is really cool. What I want to know is how do people get so twisted up that they think some want is a need?
I don't know that it's necessarily a twist up. I just think it's a misidentification of what a relationship is. I think that there are some people whose values, whether they want to admit it or not, or whether they want to write them down or not, see that that one person in the relationship is superior, one person in the relationship is more powerful, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And typically that's a male thing. Typically that's, traditionally and culturally and societally, if there's somebody that's going to, and I think that the head of the household thing is completely misused in that way, very frequently. And I mean, that's a card that should be very delicately handled and played very rarely, only when absolutely necessary. But I think there are a lot of men who come into the relationship and they think, she's here to serve me. She's here to give me what I want. And, call it a want, call it a need. It's going to get expressed the same way. And that's very assertively at best.
Well, and I've seen women who have husbands that struggle with pornography say, I need him to not be on his computer. I need him to not be on his phone. I need him to, and it's like, okay, hang on. What is going on inside of you that makes what is going on inside of him about you? Because that has nothing to do with you. I mean, sometimes it does. Like if a wife is not, if she's difficult to be around like all the time, and then there's no intimacy in the relationship, where is he going to go for that if there's not even a friendship there? And I'll probably get slain for saying that like that. She's still not responsible for his behavior.
Not at all.
But people think that this is so consistent. People think they need other people to stop doing or start doing or be a certain way so that they can be okay. And that's not a thing. Like, what is it in our culture? What's happened that people think they need other people to be a certain way so that they can be okay?
Well, it starts in the movies. You complete me. Great movie line.
Yeah. Jerry Maguire.
Gripping, grabbing, and you heard in marriage proposals for years, that comment, you complete me. And the expectation that another person can complete you is completely off base. Because it's not possible.
That's a Jesus-sized hole.
Absolutely. And can only be filled in one way by one person.
Yeah. So,
the idea that we'd get into a relationship, so that somebody else what gives us the part of ourselves that we're not good at, or, fills a hole that we can't seem to find the dirt for, that's wrong. And I don't think that there's any question, but that when people look at their relationships that way, they're going to find an end to what they're capable of in that relationship. And when people find an end to what they're capable of, then there's usually an end to the relationship as well.
Yeah, that's true. And people tend to go off in that tangent if their identity isn't solid.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's legit. And, I think it's pretty easy for people to get wrapped up in that and blame. I mean, I'd like to think I'd do better, but you look at the garden and it's just even right out of the gate, there's Adam and Eve and she's blaming the serpent, and it was true, right? And then Adam's blaming God and her, so we do this blame thing instead of going, yeah, I know. I just decided to be over here, and then I made a decision to do this thing, like the I language versus the you language.
Yeah.
And I think if we all took more personal responsibility for things, we would have less of this need, want, dysfunction in our relationships.
Yeah. And that's a question I ask clients all the time. Hey, you say, but you have an excuse, is that an excuse or is it a reason? Because they're not the same thing. And Eve had a reason, but she turned it into an excuse. There was a reason that she was tempted. There was a reason that she was distracted from what she knew God had said. But it really was no excuse.
Right.
Excuses are things you can't help. That's what they come from. Everything else pretty much is a reason. There's a reason I did this. And yeah, now I have to take account. If we say that there's a reason and I did it anyway, now I have to be accountable for it. This is the reason I did it. That doesn't make me sound very good. So I'll look for the excuse instead.
Yeah. If I'm stuck in realizing, oh, this is me, and I'm constantly one of these people that's saying, hey, I need you to, or I notice I can't be happy because my partner's not doing XYZ and I need them to, so that I can then feel okay. Like, what advice would you have for somebody that's going, oh my word, that's me? How do we help them today?
Well, I think one of the ways that I can say is an internal way, and that is, am I operating in integrity? Am I attempting and working toward exhibiting the character of Christ in how I treat my partner? And when I do that, I maintain or help to maintain my partner's dignity. I think anything that I'm going to ask them to do that would potentially chip away at their dignity is not going to be a need, because those things don't go together. Is it something I can take care of myself? Ooh. Is it something I can do for myself? And if so, legitimately and with integrity, then it's probably not a need. Is it something I can add to the relationship that will help it feel more full and more connected? I can do my part, but I also need somebody else. That companionship and the connection part has to be done by both people. So I don't know that there are any hard and fast rules about a need versus a want, but I think when you start talking about the things a relationship needs good communication. Okay, so there are going to be some needs within that concept of communication. Yeah. I need you to listen to me and hear and absorb and understand what I'm saying. You also need that from me. We need that from each other. But I think when you look at the components of a marriage or a relationship, when you're operating within those components, that I think the needs are fairly safe. But when you go outside that and say, in the case of a case I'm aware of, I need you to take part in an open marriage with me for us to stay married. But, the husband says to the wife, you can only see women, no other men. What? You start seeing this rabbit trail that takes off, like the contrails behind a jet. And it's just like, it loses all its steam, and it is indicative of the character of the individual that's making that request.
That's fair.
It's selfish.
Well, it's not biblical too.
Right.
Yeah. So that's outside the covenant. So that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
One of the things this is a tough thing that people run into. We see this all the time, where you have usually the woman, because she's the one that sees the relational needs. I don't know, that statistic may be changing, but it seems to be mostly women bringing men to therapy now. Okay. And they file for divorce more than men do, because they see the problems and they want to fix it. Right. So she hears this, okay, the relationship to be healthy needs communication, and he just won't communicate. So what's she supposed to do with that when he's like, no, I don't have anything to say? Well, yeah, you can say you need me to listen to you. I don't want to listen to you. She's got a covenant with God and this dude, and now she's stuck in this space of lonely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she may think she needs that. And what's true then is she may want that, and the relationship to be healthy needs that. But to continually try to make something like that happen, it's like you're not living in reality. She's got this situation where the dude who's like, I'm fine. This is your problem. I don't need to communicate. I'm happy. And he is, because, she's doing the laundry, taking care of his meals. She's wanting a friend, and he's good. He doesn't need any more from the relationship. She's, what do you tell a woman who's stuck in that situation, or a man for that matter, where they want this healthy connection and the spouse is like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I don't think you can overuse this this example. You also have to take the whole piece of scripture and not just a little piece that you want, but the Ephesians 5:21 talks about the reciprocal nature of a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a matter of, I'm getting what I need and that's the end of it. It's a matter of, I'm getting what I need. Okay, great. But it is the command of Christ for me to meet the needs of my partner as well.
Mm-hmm.
And those are said in different ways in that piece of scripture,
Yeah.
but they basically mean the same thing. The wife submit to the husband, and the husband love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it. But the submission there is more of a response to, when you go
Right.
back, respond to your husband. Well, what am I responding to?
Mm.
And nobody typically has a problem responding in good faith and with the best intention to someone who's being treated with the love of Christ, or as Christ loved
Yeah.
the church, or as much, or in the same way.
Yep.
So it's a matter of reciprocation. And the way I try to show this in therapy with couples is, you don't have to worry about your needs being met if your primary focus is meeting the needs of your partner.
Right.
They will respond. People respond as treated.
Mm-hmm. Often they do.
Yes. More
As
often than
long
not.
but as long as, and I want to make sure I have this caveat in there, as long as you're also respecting yourself.
Yes.
Because if you're over serving or mothering or fathering or, throwing yourself under a bus, oh boy, you're creating temptation for your partner to take advantage of you. That's
Right.
not wise.
And you're creating a trap for yourself.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has all been really insightful. I'm so appreciative of the dialogue today. We want to encourage you, if you are dealing with any of this stuff in your relationships, please wander over to our website, greaterimpact.org. There's a free PDF, How to Stop Walking on Eggshells, gives you some information on how to deal with some of these issues in your relationship. And then on top of that, there's a course for women called Strength and Dignity, and a course for couples, 2.0 Your Marriage. So join us over there, greaterimpact.org, and find out more. Glad to have you today. Thanks so much, Kyle.
Awesome.